Welcome back, people, to the DB show. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back. Now, bit of a different video today. As you saw by the title and probably the thumbnail, we are going to do our week 1 review of the EFL Championship. We watched pretty much most of the games over the weekend, so I'm only going to go and talk about the ones really much what I watched, and then obviously we'll talk about some of the stuff that I saw in the highlights and stuff like that. So yeah, now first game we're going to start with Friday, Wolverhampton v Blackburn at Molyneux. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Now interesting game for the first game of the season, very interesting. Blackburn was looking real threatening for Wolves in the first couple of minutes, maybe till I would say probably the 15th minute maybe. They looked really interesting. They were attacking quite a bit. Wolverhampton have obviously got a new manager in, I think it is Cesar Peixoto. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. I do apologize, Wolves fans, if I haven't. And he's shown quite a bit of an interesting tactic he has during this game, which I was very intrigued by. And obviously, Blackburn, as we all know, have Tony Mowbray, the typical Championship manager, very loved manager out of the Championship. You know, in the same bracket as the Warnocks and stuff like that. So let's put it this way: Blackburn showed some promising signs at the start, but it was Wolves to kick off the game with the first goal, and it was no better than from Munetsi. Now, Munetsi had a very good goal in the first half, very good goal, and it was very well played, to be honest, you know. And it looks like Wolves are going to be, you know, from the first game, I'm not going to detail it so much because it's just the first game, but Wolves look like they're going to be playing a lot of the time through the middle. They are. It looks like they're going to probably use inside forwards a lot. And yeah, Munetsi, very good assist from, I think it was Lopez at the time, for Munetsi on the run through the middle. It was a very, very good goal, very well taken, and very, very good signs from a lot of players here that we should look out for, obviously, during the season starts. Blackburn did get the equaliser, and I believe it was a set piece, assisted by, I will double check right now, Morishita. And obviously goal scoring by McLaughlin. Like I said, some of these names I'm not going to pronounce correctly because I'm really bad with names. But what a goal it was, you know, great set piece. And I honestly feel like this is what we're going to see from Blackburn this season a lot of the time, is set pieces, utilising that a lot. And also wing play goals. So we did see obviously Gudjonsson score straight away in the second half from an assisted cross, I believe it was. From off a lion, possibly, I think it was. Let me just double check. It was very, very well presented goal, I would say, because the way they ran down the wing to do this counter attack was absolutely phenomenal. You know, these are some of the players that we got to look out for, and I would probably say we're probably going to see their Blackburn centre-back, McLaughlin, who scored in the box quite a few times this season. You know, that's where they're going to be their most threats, are the tall players. And yeah, it was a very interesting game. They went up 2-1, and it's, you know, apart from the 2-1, Wolves did press straight after that. They did, but they just couldn't get it into the back of the net. They couldn't. And I would sit here and say they're very, very lucky to get a draw out of this game, even though they were the better team, in my opinion, when it came down to playing style, statistics. You know, they were very dominant, and obviously Blackburn looked like the team that was more of the success counter-attacking football and stuff like that. Wolves actually got a penalty late in the last couple of minutes of the game in injury time, with which we saw obviously the mighty hero return for Wolves in scoring in Raul Jimenez. And the big controversy is this: should it have been a penalty? or should it have been a free kick? Now, we can clearly dictate that it was a handball for sure. I would personally sit here and say it was never a penalty. You know, it was definitely a handball, but it's hard to say penalty shout on that one. You know, a lot of Wolves fans are going to probably hate me for saying it, but look, it's the first game of the season. You know, you're very lucky to get a draw out of it, I think. But I will sit here and say this: you are still my predictive to finish first in this league. You know, you're very, very interesting team. You know, your style of play is very good, and there's a couple of players that I want to watch out for. You know, Gomez on the right, Lopez. You know, Munetsi does look like a good talent. Adam Armstrong, which we know about a lot. Mane, very talented winger. You know, you got kind of a very decent defensive there with Trippier and stuff like that. So you will be on the attacks. Trippier is obviously good at bringing them balls in. So there will be crosses into that box of Wolves for sure. You know, you got Pedro Lima on the bench, Tommy Doyle, Raul Jimenez. So look, you got the players there, and there's more like Santiago Bueno. What a player he is as well. So look, you have the players to literally get back up there for sure. And my prediction is this: you'll definitely finish well up the pit, well up the table, you will, and there's no issues there with even me saying that, to be honest. So finished 2-2 in the end, and yeah, moving on to the next game, which was a very interesting game, Bolton v Preston. It finished 2-1. And I'm not gonna lie, Bolton very surprised me. You know, Bolton, I've got Bolton down as to get relegated, I have, and I generally think after seeing that performance, I know it's only the first game, but I might have judged them too quick. I think I may have judged them very too quick. You know, looking at what they did against Preston, and Preston obviously didn't really get into the game until the last, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the game. They had their chances, but they weren't finishing them. It was just very good defending from Bolton, it was. And obviously, I guess Bolton got tired legs right around the 75th minute, maybe a bit later than that. And obviously let Preston in with some subs that they made with some energy, you know. But technically, Bolton, looking at what they have, it's quite interesting. You know, the player to watch out for is Gale. You know, Gale looks very interesting, you know. Never knew much about him until obviously Bolton played. And I know, speaking to a couple of other people that obviously support League One clubs, you know, they were saying Gale was very much of a standout player last season to look out for. So, you know, Gale looks very shining. And as a QPR fan, we do have to be careful with this, as we have them Saturday. But apart from that, I would say your defence was superb, honestly. I think your defence is very strong. And I think that's going to be your sharpness this season, is pretty much your defence. You know, you was very on point with that. You know, you do have Ryan Hardy, Illing, some very good talent there. Ben Davis, Cyrus Christie, you know, some experienced players there. Even Xavier Simmons, who's obviously got a red card at the moment, who's suspended, who's a very decent midfielder, in my opinion. So, look, to go at home, obviously, you know, you got a cracking atmosphere there this week. And to go and beat Preston 2-1 straight away, pretty impressive. You know, Preston have got a lot to work to do, you know, since obviously they finished pretty low in the table last season. Paul Heckingbottom really has to get on it, you know. I don't know what to say. You know, Thierry Small did come on, looked promising at times. Really big player to watch out for as well. Alfie Devine, great player. And obviously some other players there as well. But I think them two pretty much are the standout players. You know, Osmazic is a very good striker, but I honestly believe Vucevic, I think it was, who scored the goal. No, it wasn't Vucevic, it was Arabi. Sorry, my apologies. Yusuf Arabi. Arabi came on for Lang, he did, I believe. Is he a striker? If you could let us know if he's a striker or not, I'm not too sure. Now, Bristol City obviously lost to Millwall 2-0 at home. And this is one where I may have judged Millwall a bit too early. You know, I know it's only the first game of the season, and I'm going to keep saying this, but I've obviously predicted Millwall to finish in, I think it was 11th place this season. And I know I got a lot of hate from a lot of Millwall fans saying I didn't know what I was talking about during the preview show, but technically I was right about certain things, so I do listen. And I will say this, I think personally Millwall have the best defence in the league. right now. You know, Sturge, Cooper, Taylor, Leonard, and Kramer when he comes back. You know, there's some other players as well there on the bench were pretty impressive. You know, and I think the main standout player for you guys is Josh Cobbin. You know, Josh Cobbin is a very, very good striker. I know I never mentioned it during the preview show a couple of weeks ago, but I do mean it, honestly. Cobbin from Middlesbrough to Millwall has been a very good signing. You know, honestly, he did well with Borough, and yeah, he's kicked off his career with a brace against Preston. I think it is, yep. And I just think you're going to be very interesting to watch again, because it's going to be probably the same style of football as I said like last season. You know, you're going to have a great defense and the counter attacks, and you're going to ping a lot of balls into that box for the strikers. You know, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously with Lyndon Dykes there as well, but yeah, it was. I was very impressed with the defense, and I honestly think probably they're going to have the best defense again this season, and I reckon it's going to be very difficult for clubs to get some goals past them. You know, so yeah, but apart from that, they were very all over Bristol City. You know, Bristol City were only really in the first half were interested, and I think it was a red card that really got them down a bit more, and that allowed Millwall to play their best football. So yeah, but Millwall at the start of the game were pretty impressive. You know, they were straight on it, but the goals obviously came from the end of the first and the start of the second half, and they were on it straight away, to be honest, Millwall. So yeah, they obviously are second place, and yeah, I'll be honest, that they generally could be challenged for playoffs again if they keep that defense the way it is. So yeah, but I've always rated Alex Neil anyway, so Alex Neil is a very good championship manager, I think. So yeah, but great start to the season for Millwall, to be honest. So yeah, next game, Charlton v Derby. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really watch this game, only the highlights, and for what I can see, obviously with Charlton, very end to end with both teams. You know, you can see in the first half Charlton kicked off the game pretty well with attack, but it was Derby with a great goal by Schmodigs, who I highly rate as a great player, and I'm surprised Derby actually got hold of him. And you know, John Eustace is a very good head coach in the Championship as well. You know, he's proven it many seasons with not just Blackburn, Derby, you know, and everywhere he's been. So yeah, and I think the way his style of play is obviously trying to be like Millwall in the defensive wise, being that low block and counter attacking. I honestly think they have obviously enough players to sit here and say they will always go for set pieces to try and score. You know, they've made some cracking signings in Bobby Clark, who I think is a very astonishing signing for that left side, which is going to be a very dangerous threat to any team. So yeah, but it was a very interesting game, but Derby, I would say, probably controlled the game a lot better in possession, but more of the attack was Charlton. Well, sorry, not Charlton, the counter-attacks. I do apologise. But yeah, Charlton did score 2 goals in the second half from Tyrese Campbell and Lloyd Jones. Tyrese Campbell, someone to really watch out for. He looks very interesting. You know, Connor Coventry in midfield, very good player as well. Nathan Chalobah, another one. And obviously, Comitio in the centre-back position, very interesting. Obviously, they have got some players on the bench. You know, Costello, very good player there. So yeah, I don't know much about the playing styles of Charlton at the moment. All I know is that Nathan Jones likes to try and take it to a possession side. So yeah. Now going on to one of the teams that obviously I really want to see do well in the Championship, because as everyone knows, if you're aware of the channel, I'm a big fan of Middlesbrough. I really am. I should recorrect that. I'm a big fan of their head coach. You know, Kim Hellberg is a very good coach and a very interesting coach to watch out for. I genuinely think he will eventually get Middlesbrough promoted, and I think, you know, it's a kind of scenario where I honestly believe, you know, the style of play he's brought to Middlesbrough is very fascinating. You know, he's brought that quick passing tempo, possession wise, kind of that not going to compare the head coaches, kind of like that Pep Guardiola stuff that you like to see on the pitch. You know, I'm a very big fan of Middlesbrough, I really am. And, you know, they have a great squad and they've made some great signings. And I think what really has hit them off is a great signing in Will Lancashire from Tottenham. You know, he's been destroying the Championship. Carabao Cup, 1 goal, 2 goals already, a brace against Lincoln City. And he's got players around him that also can score goals, but also provide them goals for him. You know, and I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in more players, but they've already signed Vitek, which is another great signing in goal. You know, they've got a great bench as well. I think they're going to do well. I really think they're going to push it. I've actually got them predicted down for 3rd place, I have this season for playoffs yet again. But I genuinely think what I've seen from Middlesbrough so far is a bit different to what I've seen last season. But I think they will get into things. I really do. Because I honestly think obviously the first week, adjusting to new players, adjusting to maybe possibly a new style of play as well that he's trying to bring. You know, this is actually first a full season as a Middlesbrough coach. So he's probably gone into pre-season and kind of maybe shown a little bit of other things to the players. Obviously, he's brought in some players that he believes that can work with his ability of his coaching, and you know, it's worked. So big ups Hellberg, man. Honestly, big ups to him. You know, Lincoln City, obviously first goal of the season, starting pretty much right away with Adam Reach, 12 minutes. What a cracking goal it was as well. He's going to be a player for them, Lincoln City. You know, we all know about Adam Reach. He does score them crackers. He does with Sheffield Wednesday. He did a lot of the time. And hopefully, you know, not just Adam Reach, but he can play as well as other positions as well in midfield. He can. We know that very much. You know, I'm not too sure on the players though. Like, I only know Adam Reach and obviously some others here, but you know, what really killed them off was that second half. You know, when that second half, Middlesbrough just changed, and whatever Kim Hellberg changed and did, it worked completely. You know, it really did. You know, I think whatever it was that was getting a slow paced start to Middlesbrough's first half, it was very interesting to see that a very dominant performance from Borough, and I really think they're going to be ones to watch out for. You know, 76 possession to 24 to Lincoln, absolutely phenomenal. But it's not just all about possession, it's all about checking your chances. I honestly think Will Lancashire could be shouts for Golden Boot this season. So yeah. Now, moving on to Norwich v West Brom, and I feel sorry for Norwich on this one because I have them as like Burnham, dark horses this season. You know, they've made some incredible signings. Andre Brooks from Sheffield United. They've also got Sam Field, but he hasn't really been playing. You know, they have some other signings that they've made in Toure. It's been a great start. You know, Oscar Shortau, another great player on the bench there. But I would say Norwich dominated the game completely out of West Brom from the first half. You know, West Brom had their chances and obviously scored them goals, but I just feel like Norwich got screwed over by a poor refereeing decision. You know, Hegbo scored, and he scored the first goal for West Brom, and the first goal of the day. And personally, I thought it was a handball. You know, it was definitely a handball. People have admitted it, and it's a shit call from the referee and the Lions. Though they've got to see that, and they're just very unlucky at their own home ground to concede from that. So, you know, Hegbo very lucky to get the goal. Now, Jimmy J. Morgan getting a second in the 87th minute. Now, this is a player as well as like Will Lancashire that I highly rate as a youngster. You know, watched him at Chelsea a little bit, and he's done really well. He has, I think he was at, I believe, at Peterborough, if I'm not mistaken, last season. And I could be wrong. Please put it in the comments if I am. But I've heard good things about Morgan, and obviously from what I know of watching him at Chelsea as a youngster, very, very, very good finisher, very good on the ball, balance, control, and can pick a shot out of nowhere. Honestly, very intelligent player. I'm very looking forward to seeing both of them work together. Hegebo, also another great player. But I still do think, obviously, Norwich got cheated out of this. This should have been a Norwich win or a Norwich draw. And I honestly feel like just because the first game of the season, I think they'll do well. And I also still think as well, I'll say this, if it wasn't for O'Leary, Norwich would have been well into the game as quick as possible, but it was just some great saves from O'Leary as well. So yeah, Norwich were completely dominant, and you know they're gonna be one of the dark horses I think this season, going into this championship season. So yeah, but first game of the season, Norwich fans, don't worry, don't stress, don't panic. You know, I honestly still think you know, with Philip Clement, you do really well, and yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there eventually. You know, it won't take you too long. It's just a very unlucky game and a lucky result for you guys, which I think referee needs to be better. So yeah, obviously we spoke about QPR already, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but I will, because a lot of people have been saying certain things. But look, Portsmouth at the start of the game were the team to watch. They were out straight away at the gate, and doing whatever they can to get a goal. It was just unlucky for them, you know. QPR, and they were lacking some, I would say, the ability to attack and get some good passing going. But when that 30th minute hit, the counter attacks and the ability to win the ball back in our own half and push up and get them goals for all in the first half, absolutely impressive. You know, Chair looks like, I would say just yet he's back, because I'm not going to say he's back because he's never been gone. I've rated Chair, never hated on him, I would say, first of all. And I would also say that last season and the last couple of seasons have been very unlucky with injuries. But he looks much more healthier, much more thinner, and much more agile on the ball where we used to see him. And I think this is gonna be his prime season, back to his prime. I think we're gonna see a Chair that scores a lot of goals, creates a lot of chances for us, and yeah, will get us pushed up from where we was into the top half, I believe. You know, we it's very hard to say that you go to Fratton Park and win a game. You know, it's very difficult. They're very good defensively usually, and their attack is always to push the balls into the box, and they get those players into the box for them, crosses, set pieces. You know, as we saw Terry Devlin with a quality strike in the first half, and like I've said, I've been discussing Terry Devlin pretty much all season. So yeah, I think Portsmouth right now, I wouldn't stress. You know, they got Lincoln next, but there's some very intelligent players there to watch out for. You know, I was very impressed with Brooke Smith, very good on the ball. Bishop will get there eventually, but Terry Devlin, I think, was the man to shine. But Chair got the man in the match for me, and obviously some very impressive performances, obviously from QPR. You know, Koki Sato did score as well. We saw Kamara come on to make his debut, so that was really good to see. But I think the performance of the day, I would say Keely Adamson for sure. You know, Keely Adamson came on for an injured Kemper and really impressed at that left back position. So shout outs to Keely Adamson, and hopefully we can see a bit more of that eventually as well. So yeah. Moving on to Stoke v Swansea. Now, this was a game that I didn't really focus on, I'm going to be honest with you guys. And all I can say here right now is Swansea were pretty dominant. Very dominant at the Bet365 Stadium, which is very rare to say. And Swansea look like they've got some players on them this season. They look like a key threat as well. I don't know if I would say top 10, but I would honestly sit here and say that their attack is pretty decent. You know, Stoke did score first with Bocat. Yes, Eric Bocat, I know. But they got, Swansea have got the players, you know. Opoku, who scored his debut, very exciting young talent there. Or exciting talent, I should say. And obviously, you know, you still got Vipnitic, who is a very good striker in the championship, as well as Adam Ida. You know, Adam Ida did get the second goal and to break his key pretty much to the season. Josh Key as well, very good player. Obviously, QPR were linked to him in the summer. But you've been able to keep some decent players, but with Stoke, I'm very surprised that even with Ethan Galbraith in that squad, you know, and Victor Johansson, that the game was a loss. You know, I'm very surprised with that. So yeah, but like I said, I'm not going to go too much in depth until I watch Stoke and Swansea a bit more. But Swansea looked like that very dominant side yet again. So yeah, Sheffield United and Birmingham. this was quite interesting because it finished 0-0, and Birmingham and Sheffield United I actually have pretty high in the league. You know, I got Sheffield United to finish 10th this season, and Birmingham as another dark horse of mine to finish in 5th. The only reason why I say that is pretty much because of who they've signed, how their preseason went, the playing style, and how dominant they look at the moment in games. You know, I know preseason is only preseason and it's only the first game, but Birmingham, that whole game, were pretty dominant until Sheffield United obviously collapsed in the first, say, 10-15 minutes. And Birmingham were all over them pretty much in that second half. And Birmingham do look like a decent threat. You know, I would say the only thing I really would say right now is the shots were appalling from both sides, man. Honestly, the shooting has got to be better, 100%. You know, I think what I saw with total shots and total shots on target is really bad, and even the expected goals is really bad as well, man. But Birmingham were the most attacking team, and obviously more possession, but the finishing on both teams have to be better in the Championship. And hopefully we get to see that in the next couple of weeks. But that's all I'll say with Sheffield and Birmingham. Very boring game, 0-0. Now, moving on to Watford v Southampton. Now, this was the Sunday games. Now, Watford got the win, 2-1. Now, obviously, we've probably seen a bit of a difference now with Southampton. Obviously, we've not been able to Spygate Mr. Southampton. Sorry to say it, in Tonda Eckert. But I'll be honest with you, Watford kicked off the game. They did with a goal. And it was a good goal from Bravo, and he looks like a very interesting player. Bravo does, very interesting. You know, the way he took that goal. Even though I will say this, what the hell was I think it was Belis that did it. I don't know what the hell he was doing. If it was Belis, it could have been actually Jack Stevenson. I'm not too sure, but whoever it was, freaking booted the ball straight to pretty much Bravo, and Bravo touched it down really well and skipped past two players, and pretty much great goal to start off the game. And from there, obviously, you know, Southampton did make their attacks in the first couple of minutes, but once that goal went in for Watford were pretty much on the attack until the end of the half, where Southampton were pushing for that goal. Watford started the second half pretty good, but it was Southampton that finished the game strong. I just think Watford had a bit of tired legs out there, and obviously with the subs from Southampton, it kind of changed the game a little bit as well. You know, we saw Cienza almost get injured, which was a bit of a weird one. But with goals from, I think it was Lauren, it was, that, you know, just couldn't do the job, just, you know, in time. You know, Southampton, like I said, they were attacking, but just couldn't get that finishing touch to get the draw or the win. So yeah, but we'll be watching for Southampton a bit more this season. Obviously, I'm another big fan of Tonda. I know obviously people are probably going to say Spygate and stuff like that. That's why he's not going to do well this season. But, you know, very impressive performance from both teams. But Watford get the win on this one. Burnley v West Brom are pretty much two relegated teams playing each other in the first week. And it was West Ham that scored first, and Burnley making the most impressive start to the first part of the first half. But once West Ham scored, it was pretty much West Ham in that first half. Burnley obviously did have some couple of attacks going, but just not getting them finishes in time. But second half, I would say Burnley just came out and destroyed them. I would say, you know, there was a couple of attacks from West Ham, but it was a goal from Zach Fleming in the 83rd minute from a penalty spot, and obviously finishing it off, Zach Fleming 92 minutes in stoppage time. You know, Max Kilman did get the first goal, and Solomon obviously scoring on his debut for West Ham. So very, very impressive displays from both teams in each half. But I would sit here and say that Burnley was more impressive to me, just because of, I didn't think they were going to be doing that well in the Championship this season, personally for me. You know, I thought they were going to struggle with this new manager, Nicky Hayden, but maybe I might have judged them a bit too early. So yeah, but Nuno, a championship winning manager, and he knows what to do, how to win a championship. You know, still a great squad, but a lot to do still for both teams. Final game of the week, Cardiff v Wrexham. Now, Cardiff, obviously, another team that I've obviously got down as relegation, and I'll be honest, I might have got this wrong as well. Cardiff drawing 1-1. Obviously, Wrexham starting off the game really well. Very impressive with a Kiefer Moore goal. What a goal it was as well. Cardiff did get their chances in the first half, but it was a very box-to-box game in that first half after Wrexham scored. Second half, very box-to-box again. Very both teams attacking. And, you know, Wrexham, you know, they have some very impressive players. They were defending okay, attacking. They were doing their best to attack to get a goal. But I say this for my prediction, but for this season as well. There's two young lads that I would say to watch out for in the championship, and that is the Colwill brothers. You know, the Colwill brothers are very impressive, and the one brother that I would put out here is Ruben Colwill. Now, I've watched Ruben Colwill when Cardiff got relegated a couple of seasons ago, and when he scored a cracker of a goal of a free kick then, and last season as well, cracker of a free kick yet again in the first game of the season last season. And now, what a goal to finish the first game off with 1-1. You know, Colwill getting a free kick right. Well, I don't know who it was again who went down, but a free kick was given away right at the edge of the box, 98th minute. And Colwill, what a goal it was. And he's going to be a brilliant free kick taker and one to watch out for in the championship if you get them free kicks in a dangerous level. Look, last season we saw Wrexham score some long shots, but Cardiff this season, I reckon they might just survive. I might have judged them too early, but a great performance from both teams. But Cardiff was probably my team to watch out for, I would say. You know, they looked really good, and like I said, you know, for what the team they've got defensively, absolutely on point, man. Very good performance from both teams, and can't wait to see them in the rest of the season. But that is going to be it, guys. That was your review for the first game of the week. First game's week 1, I should say. And it's QPR to finish the week 1 top of the league. And what a great way for us, I would say, to basically get up there. You know, we've needed it for a while. QPR have. And it's great to see. Teams to watch out for, you know, very impressive displays from Bolton, I would say. Millwall for sure. Middlesbrough, you know, Birmingham possibly, but Southampton, Watford. But yeah, great start to week 1. We've seen some great goals. And yeah, let's see what happens in week 2. So yeah, we'll be back with this next week. We will. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to. Peace, love, positivity as always, and we'll catch you real soon, people.